Well, hello friends out there in YouTube land. Rob here. Today we're going to be talking about instant photography. It's going to be your 2022 holiday buying guide. Stick around, it's going to be quite a bit of fun. Friends, here we are. We've got a lot to talk about today, and I cannot wait to go over all these really cool cameras with you that you see on the table. We're going to be talking about instant photography and the type of cameras that you should be looking for when you're shopping for your photographer this holiday season. It's going to be quite a bit of fun. We're going to go over quite a few different things. Check this timestamps down below for individual ideas, and let's jump right into it. First question most people have is, what's the difference between instant photography and digital instant, or DigInstant photography as I call it? And that's a very important distinction to make. We're going to talk about that quite a bit during this. The majority of the cameras on this table, all except for one of them, are actually all analog cameras. And instant photography uses an organic analog medium that you see right here, which will create this image. That's a big deal because the chemistry process is organic, it's analog, it's a physical chemical reaction that creates the image on your film. No matter what film you're using, we'll talk about formats and things later, it's the analog process with instant photography that's actually developing the film. Digital cameras use ones and zeros, and printers can print that information in ones and zeros using a color palette or pigments, ink, so to speak, in order to create an image on a piece of paper. They can also do that with light to create an image on an analog chemical process piece of film like this. And that's a big deal because it's actually blending two different types of processes, and you see that as you see it right here. Okay. When you think about that, when you blend analog and digital development processes, you kind of get a mix of both, but with benefits from both, but you don't get all the characteristics of either one. On an actual analog camera, the exposure takes place on the film in one shot when the shutter opens, however long it's open, and then closes. So the entirety of the film is exposed at the same time. That's a big deal because then as the film ejects, the dye packet, the chemistry, can be popped by the rollers, spread across the film plane itself, and then it can be very simply developed over time just through that chemical reaction. Digital photography with instant film happens the same way, except there is no exposure from the lens onto the film itself. The exposure all takes place through the printer. The printer has a print head which has LEDs across it. So a digital printer will always have some kind of print resolution, 600 by 1200, 1900 by 1280, something like that. It will have a resolution that it can print. And what that is talking about is how many of those little dots go across the print head. When we're talking about instant film, it's very important to know that this analog medium, this actual analog medium right here, is being exposed in a way it was never intended. So how does it not look digital? How come these images that are printed from two different mediums don't look like they're digital? Well, that's because of the unique properties of the analog chemical process. The process that develops this chemical reaction, kind of hides those imperfections. And then you can have this area where a digital instant, a DigInstant print from something like the Instax Mini Evo or the Play or the Square, the Square 1 can print just like any of these Instax Mini printers from your phone, from the camera, from any image on an SD card that it has. It's a big deal. Now that we got that out of the way, what are some of the benefits of it? Well, we just talked about one. When you're printing digitally, you can use any image that's a digital file. And because we're talking about formats that are much smaller than a standard 4x6, any defects that you would see are masked by that organic process, which allows the film to develop. It's a lot of fun, it pops up right away, and you can choose the images that you want to print. Good stuff, right? Well, what's bad about it? Generally speaking, not much. It's actually a great medium on the in-between, and one of the reasons that I like the Instax Mini Evo, a camera which we'll feature in just a moment. But what does happen is the output file that you have that you can print over and over is only ever as good as the input image that it captured. So when you're talking about a digital camera, that is only ever as good as its sensor. And although I like the Fujifilm Instax Mini Evo a lot, it's my #1 recommended camera right now, people ask a lot of questions, such as, hey, could I take this camera to document my trip to France? Or what about this holiday season? Could I use this as my only camera to take pictures of my family reunion at Christmas time and my grandmother's 97 years old? Well, God bless your grandmother for being 97 years old, and thank you for wanting to take this to France. And yes, you could do those things. The prints that it produces are going to be great. I like them. The digital file that it saves is a very, very small file. I did a whole video about this camera, the good, the bad, the ugly, and I did a video also titled F2, is Fujifilm lying to us? Is it really F2? And the reality is the sensor comes from the HTC One M8. That's over 10 years old. I was able to do the research and I found out what I believe to be the sensor in here. And because it's a 10-year-old camera sensor, that also means that it's optics, because it's a system on a chip sensor, which means that would you really want to take pictures of your grandmother with a cell phone that you used 10 years ago when that picture may be important in the next 5, 7 years? I think not. So my point here is that this is one of the drawbacks of DigInstant film. When you buy into a platform like this, you truly are buying the archival capability, not the instant print, but the archival, the ability to keep this image and have it have a useful lifetime, such as being blown up to 8x10, 16x20, something like that. Even using tools such as image resolution upscalers and detail maximizers through Topaz Labs and different people like that, you will find that a small sensor like this may not be the best choice for archiving your prints. Sure, it works great as an instant camera, but that's because the size of the image will only ever be this big, right? If you ever wanted to blow the digital file up from this camera larger than something like that, you would run into issues where it looks ugly. Okay, so we've talked about digital instant and instant film. Let's move into film format and sizes. When we talk about the analog characteristics and everything else, we'll really be featuring about just the differences between using the cameras. So basically the analog differences. You got a lot of options is what I'm saying. And you've got things from Instax Mini film, like this film right here, to your Polaroid film, like this film right here. And there's a huge size difference. There's also a cost difference. You also have different formats within each medium, such as this mini Polaroid film right there. And you have different sizes of Instax, such as Square, which is something square like this, but in between these sizes. You've got a wide format, which is basically wide like this. I don't have any here, but if you guys have seen any of my videos, you've seen hundreds of different, maybe thousands of different images as I've talked about them. There's a lot of stuff to consider. Plus, with Instax Mini Film, there are many different specialty varieties of film that you can get right here, which is quite a bit of fun to use. One of my favorites is the black frame on the Instax Mini. I also like the mermaid tail. It's got an iridescent kind of pastel color. I think it's really nice. You also have those same type of fun things when you move over to your Polaroid film. They've got lots of different types of film for Polaroid: black frames, black and white frames. They've got specialty colors such as this cyanotype right here, the blue film, which is blue and black. It's just all kinds of cool stuff that you can do. So there's lots of special editions. The other thing you need to know about Polaroid film is that Polaroid was a company that actually went bankrupt, was bought out by Polaroid Originals, or the Impossible Project became a conglomeration of Polaroid Originals, is back to the name of Polaroid again. It's out of the Netherlands, a really cool company. It's risen from the ashes. It was such an iconic brand back in the day, gave us amazing cameras like this SX70 right here, which still works to this day, one of my favorite cameras. But they lost the original development process, or at least that's what they say, which means that the film doesn't develop the same way that it used to. Back in the day, you got 10 shots per pack. Now you only get 8. Different film thicknesses means the packs take different, well, it's just the process. It's a different process. It's not the same film. Also, they've been working on getting the chemistry right over the past decade, right? So it has now come to a point in time where I use Polaroid film quite a bit more often, but just 5 years ago, heck, just 3 years ago, it was much more temperature sensitive than it is currently. It still is temperature sensitive, and you got to think about its expiration dates a little bit more dedicatedly. You got to think more about how you store it. Buying some Polaroid film off of the shelf at Best Buy is a quasi-sketchy operation, because even if it's not expired, who knows if it's been stored in the optimum conditions. and then maybe your prints turn out looking yucky. Not so with Instax film. Fujifilm figured this out. You don't have any kind of problems with Instax Mini film. It just works great all the time. So it doesn't matter how old the film is that I have ever experienced, I haven't had a bad pack of Instax Mini film. When you think about it along those lines, you really only have two choices. Instax film made by Fujifilm or Polaroid film made by Polaroid. Now, people might think, hey, it's a Polaroid, but it's not. This is Instax. This is Instax film. It is an instant print, but Polaroid has become a noun now. Oh, that's a Polaroid. No, this is a Polaroid. This is not. It's important to know because that colloquial term that we use does impact how we interact with the medium. And the reality is this Polaroid is a much better Polaroid for development purposes, in my opinion, than this Polaroid. You see how they're not even the same things. In fact, this is Instax film and this is Polaroid film. The Polaroid film that's being created today is much, much better, like I talked about, than it used to be. And so I use it quite a bit more often. We're going to move on now. We're going to talk about the most popular brands that we've got on this table. Now, there are lots of brands. I'm going to give some honorable mentions to Lomography. I'm also going to talk about Sofort by Leica. Those are great. These are honorable mentions. The Sofort by Leica is a neoclassic Fujifilm Instax Mini 90 neoclassic clone in a different body. But the Lomography brand of cameras are making their own really cool cameras. I don't know that they're at the quality level like Mint cameras, which we'll talk about in a second, excuse me. Now, as we talk about that, the most known and iconographic brand on the table, of course, is Polaroid. And it's because instant photography is synonymous with Polaroid, like we talked about a minute ago. However, remember, Polaroid did die. They went bankrupt. They went out of business. Their advanced company didn't change with the times, and they lost it all. They were resurrected by the Impossible Project, and they are back again today because of the work from the Impossible Project as Polaroid again. You can check that history out. It's amazing. In the ashes, between all of that, there was a small company, I say small in quotes, that started up that was able to do something and recognized that there was a medium here with this film, but there were no cameras that were able to modernize the film. Once Polaroid went out of business, they continued, well, they had stopped making cameras a long time before, but the cameras that they had made needed servicing. That's where a company like Mint Camera comes into play. They began servicing these old types of film cameras, these Polaroid SX70s, and creating their own refurbished SX70 from original parts. And they called them things like their own name, but that was done by a camera company called Mint, Instant Inspiration, and they also began creating their own cameras, like this Instax Mini camera, this TL70 right here. You might see this as being something that you recognize from the Instant Rolleiflex, Instant Flex TL70 right here. There's a lot of innovation that has happened here, but because of that, we've now got cameras like this Instax SF70, the square format camera, fully manual with automatic pop-up, flash, self-timer, all kinds of cool stuff, the ability to focus, and just really one of my favorites. We're going to talk a little bit more about Mint here in just a moment. But moving in that niche in between the time before Polaroid went bankrupt, just after they went bankrupt, and when Mint was coming around, we've also got another company that saw the same kind of edge and saw a niche that they could fill, and that was actually Fujifilm. Back in the 90s, 99, 98, sometime that time frame, they decided to start making instant cameras with their own process. And they came up with the Instax Mini series where you got these small prints. Notice they're about half the size of a Polaroid print, things like that. And they created these small, all analog, no digital cameras at the time that would be able to, where's my on? There we go. That would be able to take advantage of that in a small form factor. Most of them didn't have any focusing that was associated with them, much like the base model Polaroids. It was just zone focus, although there were some ultrasonic focusing cameras with autofocus. But they had these zone focus systems that allowed the cameras to be cheap and easy to produce with a lens that was good enough to make a print on the Instax Mini film, and then hey, Bob's your uncle, everybody was happy. But they didn't stop there. They continued to innovate and created cameras just like this. This is the Square 6. This is in a square format instant camera where you get 10 shots per pack, a set of 8, and it's something in between the Polaroid Mini Go film and the regular Polaroid film. Don't have one to show you here. Sorry about that. I love this camera. Great camera. And it was my favorite Instax Square camera until the Instax SF70 came along because of all of the really cool features, specifically manual features that the SF70 has. So there we have those 3 brands. These 3 brands currently dominate the market, and they are assured of extraordinarily high quality. In fact, one of the brands, Fujifilm, really the largest of them, was able to jump into this because they've always been into making film, chemistry, colors, and things like that. And they make cosmetics and medical imaging devices. They have a whole camera division, so it just made a lot of sense. Part of what they did to further their instant photography sales was to make printers like this Share printer right here. Now this Share printer is an older one, but what it will do is it will pair with your Fujifilm camera, no app required when pairing to your camera, and allow you to print directly from your camera images on this device. The reason that's great is because Fujifilm makes some very fine cameras that I've used to photograph weddings, and the sensors in them and the lenses and the optics in that camera system are good enough to give you the archival quality that something like the Instax Mini Evo won't. If you're shooting instant film at your family reunion and those photos matter to you, it would probably be best to do it if you're shooting digitally on a medium that can save the highest quality raw files and give you the ability to print directly right there as well. Really cool. That's what Fujifilm did. But they didn't stop there. They gave you the ability to pair this Share printer and the other ones just like it that they've got that are newer directly to your cell phone. And that means you can print any picture that you can download or have on your cell phone on that really cool Instant Mini film, which has led me to a very controversial statement that people don't usually like to hear about the Instax Mini Evo. If you're buying this camera as a camera to document your life, you should think twice about its digital files. This camera does have the ability to pair with your phone. The camera sensor in your phone, your iPhone or your Samsung, is quite a few orders of magnitude better than the sensor they have chosen for here. So on images that you might want to save for archival quality, it would be better to take those images on your phone and then print them using the bridge function here to print from your phone to this camera so that you have them on the Instax Mini film. Now people say, why? Why wouldn't I just use this camera right here? It does both. Yes, it is a good instant camera. It is a bad digital camera. It has everything to do with the small sensor, the 1/5, 1/5 of an inch sensor from over a decade ago that they chose to use in this camera. Had they put a modern cell phone sensor in here, true, it would have costed more, but it would also provide a much, much better archival quality image. For some examples, you get a file that's less than 1.5 megabytes in full color on around 5,000 by 2,500, something like that, 2,600 resolution. And the bit rate is just tiny and compressed. It's muddy. When you blow this up into a 5:7 or an 8:10, the image that looks great on your Instax Mini print looks terrible. It's just the way that it is. That's the controversial statement. People don't like to hear it. But the reality is, if you're going to photograph with this camera, take the most important pictures, if you're going this kind of light, with your cell phone and then print them off through here because it does have the same functionality as this one. We're talking about that. Let's actually move over to our models and descriptions. We've got several different options up here. I want to let you know what's actually on this as far as there's just great cameras up here. Mint cameras kind of on this side, Fujifilm's in the center. We got some Polaroids right here. The easiest camera to start with out of all of these, even after that controversial statement that I gave you, is actually this one right here. The Instax Mini Evo will pair with your phone to print the pictures you take on your phone. When you forget the camera, it will print off of the SD card that you have plugged into here. It has an image memory of 40 images. It gives you some programmable functions, so to speak, such as changing the exposure by exposure stops. You have no access to the to the manual functions, but you do have self-timer macro function. You also have some really interesting styles where you can change 10 different lens combinations with 10 different style looks for 100 different combinations of interesting images to include half frames and multiple exposures, black and white, things along those lines. And then you've got this really interesting print lever. When you're ready to print, you simply pull the print lever and it ejects. There's something else that's really cool about this camera, specifically when we look around at the back of it. After we get her turned on, we actually have a small but useful set of tools to allow you to edit images in here, specific to crop, brightness, rotation, image saturation, things like that. That means that you can really get the most out of printing an image off of this camera. Because of that, it earns my top award. If you're going to buy a camera for someone, whether they're starting off or whether they're professional, they would love to use this camera. It'd be a great camera. You can get it for around $189 to $199. Lots of fun. It does not have a removable battery. You're going to get about 500 to 700 charge cycles before you lose about 20% of its overall life. People ask me all the time, oh man, since it doesn't have a removable battery, will it be any good? Will I have to throw it away in a few years? Maybe, but the functional use of this camera will far outlive the battery. But the battery is going to last you if you charge it. If you take 100 packs of film a year, 100 packs of film a year, you'll probably get 500 packs of film about 5 years before you noticed any kind of real issue with the battery. They use some really good batteries in here. Fujifilm's tough on that. On the second note, if you're going to do the same kind of thing, remember this is the DigInstant kind of style. You could just as easily get a Share printer, save about 50 bucks. I think between the two, I would choose this camera. Not because the print resolutions are the same. They aren't the same between their modern Share printers and when you use this as a bridge. That's a way that Fujifilm nerfs this camera. I don't know why they do it, but they just want to encourage you to buy both, I suppose. But really, other than that, this is a great walk-around camera. I like it for that reason. It's a little slow and laggy, so between the two, I would probably still buy this camera and do just like I said before. Take the most important pictures with my cell phone, if that's all that I had with me, and still print from here. You cannot connect your Fuji camera to this camera like you can to the Share printer, only the cell phone. Moving on along, as we talk about other Fuji cameras, the Instax Mini Evo actually dethroned my Instax Mini 90. As far as features, functions, and everything else, this camera is a whopping camera with a great lens on it. It's going to give you beautiful and consistent looks all the time with a true xenon flash to get that bright flash when you need it. All of these cameras in here are really only going to work well for you in any kind of good light. If you don't have good light, don't photograph with Instax Mini Evo unless you can photograph, or Instax Mini Film or Polaroid Film, unless you can photograph manually, because the automatic functions built into these cameras will immediately make your images not look so nice because they're set up for 800 speed or 600 speed film-ish, as well as a bright sunny day with a daylight balance, which is what makes the mint cameras look so attractive as far as I'm concerned. When we're over here looking at the other camera we've got, this beautiful Instax Square, I think this to the Instax Mini 90, they're very similar types of cameras, both lots of functions, multiple exposures, the ability to change the exposure plus or minus 1 or 2 stops, things like that, self-timers, and several different modes. What you will notice between all of these cameras in the Fujifilm range is that the only one that will autofocus or focus on a specific point is the Instax Mini Evo. These two cameras, as well as all of these cameras, are all zone focus. That means if you're not good at measuring distance or judging distance just by look, you might have a bit of a hard time. We're going to move over here to the Polaroid. I'm going to save my favorite cameras in general for very last. Okay, so we're moving over to the Polaroid. And the Polaroid cameras over here, we've got the Polaroid Go. I think this is a great little camera. I love it quite a bit for its functionality and its funness. All we do is pick this guy up, have a good time, and notice how tiny and small it is. Loading cameras, I think, is a good time to talk about. They're pretty simple. You want to load this camera, you simply open the back. I'm going to get some black frame color edition film, open it up. They make it tough to open up so you don't do it accidentally, I suppose. And then you get some stickers, right, which is pretty cool. And then in this instance, you line up you line up the front with the front line right there. Boom. Now we're in. All we got to do is wait for it to eject the slide. Now this camera is loaded and ready to go. Makes lots of fun little prints. I can't wait to use it a little bit later. And I take it all over the place with me. It's a fun camera to go. My other camera that I like quite a bit from Polaroid is actually the Polaroid. This is the One Step Plus. They've got the Polaroid Now Plus. The Plus just means it has some Bluetooth features. You can control this camera from your phone through the app, although you cannot see what it sees, but it does give you access to more manual functions. The biggest issue with the manual functions and Polaroid cameras is that, well, Polaroid's still figuring out the processing of those pictures. And so there still is a little bit of variability from image to image, but that shouldn't stop you from having a great time with it. The ability to use a Polaroid Plus camera, the Plus identifier, will give you the ability to jump in there with things like automatic shutter, remote shutter, portrait pictures, all kinds of different things, multiple exposures through the app, because it will control the camera. If that's too much and you don't want to get into that, you can also just get a regular old-fashioned Polaroid Now, which is really nice. The Now and the Now Plus both have automatic selection for focusing, so you can either choose to focus portrait if they're close or landscape if they're far away. Two different focusing modes. Those zone focusing modes are something you would normally have to do on a Fujifilm camera. In the current edition Now series, you don't have to do that. They also got rid of a lot of the different indicators on the back when they switched from the One Plus or the One Step to the Now series, which means that you have more information being shown on a smaller area, which sometimes means you have to recognize more button presses from that little display, but it's still a lot of fun. You get, here the most important part, you get that iconic Polaroid picture, which is exactly what you want. Okay, as we continue talking about that, we're going to talk about the Polaroid SX70. If you have the ability to pick up one of these guys right here, you would absolutely love this camera. It's quite a bit of fun. Manual focusing on this camera, beautiful prints, completely automatic. Mint is also one of those really innovative companies that if you've got an SX70 or an Alpha 1, you can add a flash bar to it to get a xenon flash. And it also has on the back different settings that you can choose for the flash, whether or not you're using the 600 speed film or something else. Now, there is a big difference in film today. This requires SX70 film with a battery in it. These require I-type film without a battery in it, because the battery is actually in the camera. But you can use 600 speed film in this camera with a neutral density filter. You just have to know that ahead of time. As we move on along over here, now we're getting into my favorites. Hey guys, this camera right here by Mint, the TL70, got me into loving and using instant film quite a bit about 7 years ago. The ability to focus using that big bright viewfinder right there. I don't even know if you can kind of see it like I'm trying to show you. But that big bright viewfinder, the ability to add neutral density filters with a pop-up flash that comes up right there. All of your controls on the side, such as a self-timer, the ability to over and underexpose. This is aperture priority. And a first for every camera on this table, except for this one, remember this is older, is a 5.6 aperture, which is gigantic for Instax film. This shoots Instax Mini film, right? And it ejects like magic right out of the top. One piece of thing to note, Fujifilm is going to tell you this is like an f2.8 or 2.4 aperture. It's kind of a lie. I have a whole video about it. It is, but the aperture is that little tiny hole right there, that itty bitty hole. It's almost like pinholes. So this is more like an f22. These other cameras are more like f12s. Even the Polaroids are f8s or f12s. Here on the SX70, you can get f8, which is pretty nice. So when Mint came out with this camera at the f5.6, that is huge for Instax film, and you're able to get big, beautiful, bright images with some background bokeh, and with that aperture priority and some simple but powerful controls, you can get great images. I have 35 videos going over each a video about one particular pack of film taken from this camera. So over 350, I've taken over 3,000 images, but I documented my first 35 rolls. It was going to be my first 10 rolls in my roll review. I know they're packages of film. I just call them roll reviews. It's funny, right? We can laugh, we're friends. So I take you on my journey of learning how to shoot with this camera. F8 plus ND8 makes it great. And because Mint is such an innovative camera, they do make different accessories that you can put on the camera and take off the camera, right? Like neutral density filters. Then they came out with the RF70. This is the Instax Wide film, which is as wide across as 2 Instax Mini film, and it was a prototype that they sent me for testing. They sent this prototype to lots of people. It was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed using it, and was really the first time I started using the Instax Wide at weddings. The ability to put on a neutral density filter, choose my aperture and my shutter speed with that Instax film in a form that collapsed pretty easily and then ejected out the top, made it much, much more simple for me to provide Instax albums to my brides and grooms when we were out on location. And it became something that was a big part of selling Robert Ham Photography for the different services that we offer. People love Instax prints. And of course, as we come around to the last and most recent camera that they sent me for review, is this Instax SF70. Now, out of all the formats here, my favorite is the Square format, and the Goldilocks zone between the SF70, the Polaroid Go, and the regular Polaroid is really, really nice. I like this Square format. It's a little bit smaller than the RF70, and it just makes a great image, right? So it's got all the same features with neutral density filters, f5.6 all the way down to f22, the ability to go up to 1/500th of a second with a threaded shutter release, print, pull to print, and it's just the list of features goes on. One of my favorite cameras. These cameras are pricey. They're around 800 bucks. The TL70 right here is around $350 to $400. If you can find an Instax Square 1 or Square 6, it's around 100 bucks, $150. Around $100 for the Mini 90, around $190, $200 for the Mini Evo, 100 bucks for the Go, generally about 140 for the Plus version, the One Step Now Plus, and then around $400 to $700 or more for something like a SX70, specifically one that's been completely refurbished. All of these cameras right here would be a great entry level for anyone at any experience level. But if you could only get one, I'm going to tell you I would go with this one right here. And this has everything to do with what I think the general, most regular user would want. But if I could only have one, I'd take the SF70, right? Because I just love the analog manual part. But for people that are out there buying, if it's your first camera, then you're going to love this because you'll be able to choose the images you want to print instead of printing every one. You'll save money on the long run for print, but you'll learn quite a bit about photography, composition, exposure using this. It's really a great tool. Just don't archive your family photos with it. And when you're ready to jump up to the world of the big boys and you want to actually take meaningful photography using your own settings where you can say, I made that photo happen with my own brain and my own thoughts, jumping up to something like the Mint SF70 or RF70 is going to be where you're going to get full manual control of the aperture, shutter speed, as well as focusing on your instant camera, something that no one else is offering except in one of Mint's revamped, refurbished SLR670S or SLR680, which they have added the time machine and some different things to give you that ability with Polaroid. If you ask me, I think I'd pick it up right here. Newer, ready to go, more modern. I like it quite a bit. So there we go. There you have it. These are my final thoughts. There are so many things to consider within these. Which one was your favorite? I think that this video kind of speaks for itself for where I am. If you like any of these accessories, things like this, don't forget to look down in the links below. Oh, something I do want to tell you. Mint has a free films for life as long as you get a certain number of likes on a particular image with a particular hashtag, then submit that to Mint. They will send you free film. So you could literally never pay for film with this camera or any of the Mint cameras using their free film for life just by getting the requisite number of likes using a specific Instagram hashtag. And now that program changes from time to time. It used to be 4 likes. It might be 10 likes or something now. I don't know. But I think that's a really great thing. They'll send you free film. They also give you a really cool warranty. So if you get one of these and you have any troubles with it, they've got your back 100%. If you buy an old SX70 or other cameras like that, you don't necessarily have anything other than the manufacturer's warranty. Mint, although a smaller company, has a huge market share with these innovative cameras, and they want to keep them working and in your hands, and they're really great people. I really like them. So Gary over there at Mint and the doggy down there, the Mint dog, you guys take it easy. I hope you had a good time. Don't forget to use Amazon links and things down below. Send me a cup of coffee if you like this video. Ask questions. I'll do my best to help you. And as always, these are just my thoughts and opinions. Share with me yours. What do you think? Do you enjoy this? Did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? Leave a thumbs up, a thumbs down, and comments below. I want to thank you for watching and remind you I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Bye for now.